Welcome back to another episode here. Today we have Dr. Janice Whaley. Did I say that correct?
Yes, you did. You
All right.
did.
Listen, what I love about the last time that we spoke, you said they told you you would not see old material. However, you were patient. You played the long-term game. 28 years later, you proved them wrong, and you're still bringing others along with you. Like that's the cool part about it. You entered an ad for a job. It turned into a 34-year calling. What did you feel the day you realized this wasn't just work? It was truly purpose.
I think my second case that I went on, early on in my career, I was a staff level employee and I became a coordinator. And I went on this case. And when I got back, one of the responsibilities at that time was that you actually took the organ that was recovered to the operating room. And in those days, we still weren't as strict in terms of meeting people. And the patient that was going to receive the organ was in the hallway of the OR. And I looked at them, but I didn't know if that was the patient or not. And they looked at me and they looked at the cooler and they said, "Is that my heart?" And I said, because I didn't, I wanted to be careful. And I said, "I think so." And he said, and he just broke down in tears and was like, "Thank you
Wow.
so much, for my second chance." And I said, "Thank the donor, not me." But I was able to facilitate getting it here for you. And I wish you the best. And I think I left that morning knowing that this was my purpose, this was my calling, and I've been able to make a career out of it.
And now you're CEO. Look at that.
Yes,
Look at
yes.
God. As my
It's
wife
been
would
a
say, look at
journey.
God. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Um, this is cool. This is really cool. I can only imagine the experiences that you were going through though to get to the before you got here, prepared you really for leadership. I mean, just that one interaction, I can imagine there was a leadership lesson to be learned there. So, how did those early experiences really kind of shape you, especially when there was people that probably didn't look like you in this space?
Yeah, and so I noticed that a lot, especially when I was afforded the opportunity to go to meetings. I was like, wow, this room does not look like me.
Yeah.
And I think early on, I determined that representation matters and that in order for our communities to really understand donation and transplantation, I needed to continue to grow and develop as a leader so that I could communicate to people that, hey, this, we do provide second chances. There's a lot of misinformation out there, but there are a lot of us that are benefiting from second chances. In our communities, we have um, diseases such as hypertension and diabetes, and it causes renal failure. And so, the majority of the people that are waiting are people of color. And it's due to all the challenges, healthcare disparities, equity, and the ability to get healthcare causes organ failure when you're not taking care of yourself. And so all of these things come into play, and I just wanted one day to be able for people to see that, yes, this does matter. Yes, we can help people. And so I'm here today.
What kept you going when you could have just done something and pivoted to do something easier? Like this journey for you was challenging, right? People were
Yeah.
telling you you weren't ready for this. You probably
Yeah.
were hearing you probably thought at some point, am I ever going to get there? The imposter syndrome is probably loud as hell. What kept you just moving forward towards this goal of yours?
The people, the people that I knew we would be able to help, the donor families that, even though they had this tragedy, um, would have hope through organ donation and someone being given that gift. They would leave legacies. Um, and in more detail, I was able to meet a young guy that had cystic fibrosis. His name is Tyler Nelson. And I met him when he was still a teenager. He had just discovered that his doctors had told them without a transplant, a liver kidney transplant, he would not survive much longer. And so he was worked up and he was put on the transplant list. While he was waiting, though, when he felt healthy enough, he did come to work at our organization, volunteer. And one day, he wanted to get something to eat. And I said, do you have your license? And he said, yeah, he didn't have a car. And so it's a beat up car, but he had never driven a car before by himself. So I said, here are the keys. In my head, I knew that he was waiting on his second chance. And I knew that anything we could do to help this young kid every day was important to him. So I let him drive my car. I was dying, but he did get to Chick-fil-A and back safely with my car. But he said, nobody has ever trusted me like that before. And he ended up getting a transplant. So fast forward, I kept up the relationship. We just had this bond. He went and talked to different schools about donation and transplantation, and it was a student's brother who was in an accident that actually donated organs to Tyler.
Wow.
And so Tyler lived close to 6 years after transplant. Cystic fibrosis does not go away. And so over time, there are other complications, and he just decided that he was ready to rest at a young age. But he had lived the life of somebody who was 50 years old in terms of his parents were very well. They did everything that they could to allow him to see what he may not see if he had lived even longer.
Yeah.
And so he called me one day and said, hey, can you come to see me? And he was in the hospital. And I said, okay, what's going on? He said, oh, just come. I need to talk to you. So when I went to talk to him, I was in a position, at the time I was a chief operating officer, and I was kind of at the crossroads and just feeling very challenged and overwhelmed with, where is this going? So I go talk to him, and he says to me, Ms. J, I've decided to rest. And it wasn't clicking in my head. I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, the doctors told me that I have a 30% chance of a second transplant. And he said, but Miss J, there are other young people that have not gotten even one chance. So I want those organs to go to someone else. And then he started telling me about what he wanted at his funeral. So I'm trying to hold back the tears because he was such an adult at such a young age. He made it to 21, and he said, but there are two things that I want you to do for me. I think it was three, but two of them I'll share. He said, the first is take care of my mom. And me and her, we've been friends forever,
Wow.
close
That's so
friends.
cool.
And the second thing he said was, don't ever stop doing what you're doing. He said, I am here. I have had 5 more years with my family and my friends. I've been able to do almost everything that somebody maybe double my age has not done. And he said, but stay doing what you do because it's people like me that you were able to help. And that has stuck with me and allowed me to have this resilience to keep doing what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And at the very beginning of the podcast, you mentioned it was during that time that somebody had said to me, I don't think you're quite cut out to be a CEO. And so that was in my head. And then Tyler says to me, don't stop doing what you're doing because you have helped people like me. So I continued on because organ donation and transplantation is no respecter of persons. There, everyone is no matter what race you are, is hampered by this. Even COVID, some people needed lung transplants because of the after effects of COVID. And so I think for me, it reinvigorated my want to continue to help people, to have a voice, to be at the table, to talk about, hey, there's a certain way in which we should approach families and educate families about donation. Cultures are different, they're very important. And so we have to continue to dispel the myths and misconceptions. We have to make sure that we are giving and just not taking. And those are some of the things that I knew that I was in the position to do. And I'm here today as the first and still the only Black female CEO in this country. And I was proud of it when it happened, but 6 years later, I'm still the only one.
Yeah.
And if we are going to continue to get people to donate, we have to be at the table. We have to help in making decisions. So, yeah.
I really want to kind of go back to the story. Like, what what is your why? That is the why. Why do I keep fighting? That was it. I the small things that we do in someone's life, as in
Yes.
handing over the keys to a car,
Yes. Yeah.
right? That was your
Yeah.
pride. I mean, something happens to that car, and now what? Like you have a bigger problem.
Yeah.
And I just remember this woman I worked with, and her son passed away. We went to school. So me, her son went to school, and
Yeah.
then me and her happened to be working at the same place. So when she found out, oh, my son goes to the school, and then her son was working. So whatever. It wasn't like I was best friends with her son. I knew her son in passing. He was just cool. We had one class together. He was great. But then I worked with this lady, and she understood my life situation, right? So she understood that I was walking to work 45 minutes a day. She understood I was graduating. She understood there were some
Yeah.
needs, and she was just so kind to me. I mean, to the point that she would do the same thing, hand me her keys. Efrain, you got to go get a tux. Here goes the keys. You on your break, go do what you got to go do. And
Yeah.
she just trusted in me, right? She's seen
Yeah.
something in me, seen
Yeah.
something in me so much that she showed up at my graduation. Her son wasn't graduating. I
Wow.
was graduating. Her son already had graduated the year prior. And she came, and to this day, I still got the charm. She gave me this necklace. It was a cross. It was a chain from Jared. And mind you, I'm like, I never experienced this growing up. Like, especially Jared. Like, let's
Yeah.
let's talk about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I always I will never get rid of the charm. The necklace broke. I'll
Yeah.
never get rid of the charm. But I found it recently, and I sent her a picture, and I said I would always cherish this because you showed
Yeah.
up when you didn't even know that something was happening in my own life, and for you just showed up doing the normal things that you normally do. That's what led
Yeah.
you here, is always being authentically true yourself. And I think
Yeah.
that's what I love, Dr. Janice, is that you didn't have to portray anybody else. You just had
No.
to wait for the right people to see you for who you are. And I think that's what happens sometimes. And correct me if I'm wrong, doctor, do you feel that sometimes we're trying to portray an image that is not us because we're trying to get to a role that we want in reality, just being yourself? Can we talk about that a little bit? If the Heart and Hustle podcast has ever sparked any idea or made you think differently, do us a favor. Make sure to guys share this, post it on LinkedIn, or even text that nonprofit friend that you just have. Whatever works, this is what keeps the conversation going and allows us to just grow this community together. Seriously, we appreciate you.
Yeah, I think one of the things that has allowed me to be successful is authenticity, and not always conforming to whatever the standard is. Um, and it's hard to do that. And a lot of people fear that it will result in them losing their jobs. And especially in this day and era where there are things happening that you never could have imagined.
Yeah.
But I think care and compassion are things that I feel transcend almost anything. I gave this kid an opportunity to volunteer at our office to keep his mind off of waiting for that pager that he carries to go off. I watched him daily checking his battery, waiting for that text that said, "We have an organ for you." And and so knowing how desperate but calm he was about that second chance just made me know that, wow, I need to be as real as possible, as authentic as possible, and I can still get the job done. And that has followed me throughout my career, where I am authentic. I don't conform to the norm. I know a lot of people that do. I've distinguished myself in multiple ways when I realize I don't want to groupthink. I want to think about how I can motivate and inspire people and inspire my team to do their best work. Kindness, compassion, empathy are things that are very important in that process.
And so basic. So basic,
Basic,
but
yes,
yeah.
basic, you know,
So many leaders just need to hear that. It is the basics. It is just
yeah,
allowing someone to feel seen, a little bit of recognition. Like I was telling
yeah,
my neighbor, he's an electrician, and with all this extra copper, he usually
yeah,
just gives him the copper to cash in, and which is cool. But I said, that's cool, but just imagine if you cash it in yourself and then go get them a gift card. Now, think about how far that went because you thought
yeah,
outside the box. Makes a
yeah,
difference,
yeah,
to just recognize people, show a little bit of empathy, a little bit of grace at times as well,
yeah.
as we continue to maneuver through some challenging times. I think there's some big myths around becoming a donor. I can only imagine that you know a
Yeah.
lot of them. How do you break through that noise? There's some that we can talk about that you can kind of share that you hear all the time that is completely not true. It's just somebody made it up.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of that going on right now in our industry. And what's bad is it's making people be reactionary and just totally 100% say, I'm not going to be a donor.
Hmm.
But they're not realizing that by them saying that, someone on the list may die today because of it.
Hmm.
And obviously, we don't want your organs until you're done with them. Um, but every day in this country, 17 people die. And there's over, excuse me, 100,000 people that are waiting on a second chance. And they look like me and you and others, but they're waiting on a second chance to be able to finish school, to see their grandkids graduate. And so when these myths and misconceptions go out there, we hurt the very people that are waiting on the second chance. And so I would tell anybody, ask more questions. Don't go by what you hear on the news, because there's always a sensational piece of that.
So I'll tell you what I heard, and you can tell me if this is right or wrong. So I think on my ID it says I'm a donor. I'm not 100% sure, but I would hear that people would say they didn't want to be a donor because God forbid something happens that they felt they wouldn't be saved because they were organ donor. And I don't know how true that is, but it's just myths. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a myth. We don't come into play until the doctor has determined that your injury is unsurvivable. We don't want to be called right when they're removing the plug, because a donor has to be on a ventilator, right? In order for oxygen and perfusion to still go to the organs. And so it doesn't matter whether you're a registered donor or not. The whole point in getting you from, say, from the accident to the hospital is to give you a chance to live.
Hmm.
But if you get in there and you are showing signs of it being an unsurvivable injury, then we are called to identify whether or not you're a potential donor. What's very important for people to know is that less than 1% of the death population can be a donor. So some of these stories, there's a lot of testing. It's a complex process. And no doctor, I've heard the story that somebody woke up in a bathtub of ice, and they woke up and there was a note that said, call 911, your kidney has been removed. Okay, but where did it go? Because there's blood work, there's matching testing that goes on, and no doctor is just going to take a cooler and say and get, take an organ and say and put it into somebody without knowing the details about the donor. So but there's this disconnect, and it's always somebody's cousin that it happened to, or friends of a cousin who heard it, and you can never track down to where it came from. But the myth that you mentioned is the most common, that if the paramedic sees that they're a donor, that they're going to make them. Well, actually, what they do to help you survive is required in order to be a donor. So if they don't do anything, then you're not going to be a donor, because they've got to resuscitate you. They have to intubate you. They have to give you fluids. Otherwise, your organs won't be usable for transplantation. So it's kind of a catch-22.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I like that. I like that. I always wondered, I hear it is a friend of a friend that said XYZ.
Yeah.
And you always got to be very mindful, especially
Yeah.
nowadays. I mean, AI makes everything look real, and it really
Yeah.
ain't. So you really got to be careful on these things. But I love that you were able to kind of talk about it. And I want to talk back to your leadership as well. One of the interesting things that you mentioned to me was that getting into this space, you weren't opposed of an executive coach, someone that can really
Yeah.
kind of guide you to this next
Step.
part of your life.
Yeah.
You had to be prepared for this. There's a lot of eyes on you. You wanted to
Yeah.
make sure you came at this correct. What role do you think that executive coach really did in sharpening your leadership and silencing the noise? I think that's another thing, is silencing that noise that was coming with that new title.
Yeah, so preparing to become a CEO, I made some sacrifices and on my own dime hired an executive coach. And to this day, I have one now, a different one, but I still have a coach, because there's value in continuing to learn and grow as a leader. And so I've committed to that. But I hired because the organization that I was at had an executive coach, but that person being paid by the organization has more interest in knowing where you are, what you're doing, versus I didn't feel like they were giving me any leadership growth. In fact, I am an introvert, and what this person was telling me was that introverts don't make good leaders. So I was constantly hearing all these things that was saying that I wasn't a good leader, but yet I had receipts of performance and delivering on extraordinary results. And so I was like, she said, you'd probably be a better consultant, or she was just giving me everything but this dream and this calling. This was my purpose, and I was very intentional about trying to get there. So I said, okay, I'm going to get my own. So I get this new executive coach who really, first, he shut down the noise. He said, I need you to get up every day and tell yourself in the mirror that you're the next CEO. Don't need to say where.
Yeah.
And he really helped me. He said, no matter what you hear today from anybody, if it's negative noise, put it aside, stay focused. And that's what I was really able to do, was to stay focused on the goal, work on my areas of opportunity. And one of the key things was, he said, he didn't say receipts, that's a new thing that came out, but he said, you have the results, you've done the work. And so we just need to create that story that you're going to tell to your next job. And so that's what got me, to this place. And so I firmly believe in making sacrifice. I think I miss getting my nails done for about a year, just finding my pennies and putting them together, and working with this person. And he saw me through, and I still talk to him, not as often, but he has remained a part of my life. And now I have a different coach that helps me within my current space as a CEO. And I just think that if you're looking, we need to make sure that we understand that we can't cut corners.
Hmm.
So don't think that, oh, this person did this and they didn't even have a degree, so I don't need a degree. You need a degree. I'm speaking to my people. You need to advance your education. If it's not a degree, if it's a trade, whatever it is, get those letters behind your name. That's important. We don't get those chances. We just don't. And I just don't believe, I believe our steps should be ordered.
Yeah.
And I believe that I sit in this seat because I ordered that. And I continued. I mean, I just finished my PhD last year in organizational leadership. And it's because I want to impart to people, to inspire and motivate people. Don't cut corners.
Yeah.
Do what you got to do.
I think the biggest thing you're saying there, doctor, and I believe me, I'm going to clip this moment, is when you mentioned that, the sacrifices needed, like you
Yeah.
understood, hey, I need this. Where do I cut from? And it was the nails, it was the hair, it was the trips. And
Yeah.
as a coach myself, I always tell people, they always, they're in a space where they could get to the next level, but they're in their own ways. And then you
Yeah.
say, well, this is my price. Well, I don't have money, and I can't afford a coach. And I think to myself, well, the nails, the hair, if you just
Yeah.
make that sacrifice to
Yeah.
invest in yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes it is just a mental thing that you got to invest, right? Just the way that you would invest into being fit, right? You got to go put in the work at the gym. It's the
Yeah.
same way. We got to
Yeah.
build the mind. We got to find someone that can kind of help us with that noise, that
Hmm.
mindset reset. So I love that you said that, because
Yeah.
there's so many people that are of color that think they can do it alone. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's the wrong mentality to have.
Yeah.
So many people are in their own ways, and all they need is someone to guide them, to
Yeah.
help them away from that, get away from that noise, or to create systems that allows them to really show up differently.
Yeah.
And I love that the executive coach kind of gave you all that you
Yeah.
realize, no, this was an investment in me. Yes, I had to make a sacrifice, but look
Yeah.
where you're at today.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes you got to sacrifice a little to get a
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I like
And
it.
I,
I like
yeah,
it.
and I think the other thing is, your mentors don't all have to look like you. And
True.
up until recently, none of them look like me, but they supported what I did, and they were able to help me to get to where I am today.
I
And
like that.
they're my best friends. And so not everybody is selfish. Not everybody is a bad person because they don't look like you.
Yeah.
There are some that will champion and will go to bat for you, and I have several in my life who have done that for me and paved this pathway for me. So
I
yeah.
love that. That's another one. I'm clipping that one too. What's one thing you tell yourself now that you wish you knew back then?
Um, oh, that's actually a hard question. I think it took me a while to build the confidence
Hmm.
because I had heard so much, and I was like, "There's no one as a CEO like me." In fact, I was the only black CEO, and then I think a year after I became CEO, there were two black male CEOs that ended up coming into the space, and so I just when I walked into my interview, I was petrified because I automatically at that I had to shut the noise down because the noise was telling me, "Oh, it's a wrap. You're not getting this job."
Yeah.
And I had to shut that down and say, "Be calm, cool, collected. You know your space. You know your expertise, and you brought receipts. So show them what you've been able to do." And that's exactly what I did. And I'm so grateful for the work that a coach, my other mentors, they really prepared me to be where I am today. And so I think the noise was a challenge for me. And sometimes when I would talk to my coach, they would say, you know what's getting in your way? It's not your expertise, it's the noise. And
Yeah.
you have to just shut the noise down. So I think my younger self could have benefited from where I am now. Like the noise, I don't even care about the noise. We've had some stuff in the industry, like I said, that has come about. I sent an email to my staff and I said, stay focused. There's
Yep.
100,000 people depending on you. Stay focused on the
I
work.
love that.
Stay focused on the
I love that.
mission. And so when you're focused on who you need to be, although my journey did not come overnight, I got to this place because I stayed focused. I was resilient. I knew I could do it. And I'm here today because of that.
You're so good. You're
Oh,
so
thank
good. I love
you.
this. I love
Thank
this story.
you.
I love the story. I love to because a lot of people they see these opportunities or they see people like you in these seats and they think it just happened, as you mentioned, overnight. But there was so much fighting. There was years of you, fighting for this. There was the imposter syndrome. There was the noise. There was the lack of confidence. But none of that stopped you.
Yeah.
You just took that and it fueled you of anything. Every time someone told you no, it fueled you. And then God put people in your life like what was it?
Yeah.
What was the gentleman's name?
Tyler
I was
Nelson.
gonna say Tyler, but I didn't want to mess up his name. I knew it started with a
Oh,
T.
yeah.
Tyler
Tyler. Yeah.
to give you those words of encouragement.
Yes. Yes.
When you needed it the most. You said at that time, I
Yeah.
needed it the most. But
Yeah.
because you continued to show up. Just imagine you would have gave up.
Yeah.
You would have never heard Tyler say that to you.
No, no. And
So I love it. I really
yeah,
love it.
and kudos to his wonderful parents for giving him the life, knowing the possibility that he only had a short life. I mean,
Mhm.
they poured into him like no other. I was inspired by that. And so he didn't regret one day on this earth.
I love that.
And kudos to his parents for that. And they're
100%.
still good friends with me today. So, yes.
Who would it be? I mean, hopefully we're friends too. I mean, after this podcast,
Yes.
who wouldn't want to be friends with Dr. Janice?
Yes.
Um, I ask you, in the space of healthcare, what I'm also realizing there's a lack of innovation, right?
Mhm.
I think AI now coming at full force that now healthcare nonprofit spaces are trying to get their data in line because in
Mhm.
reality you can't utilize AI if there's no data. We can't
Yeah.
continue to handwrite things. We got to have things
Yeah.
digital.
Yeah.
Are you guys in the space of looking at AI? Are you guys implementing it? What does AI look like
Yes.
for you in this space?
So I think it has a role, but I will say that more in data, more in how we execute to get to our goals in terms of how we educate the public. So in my service area, 60% of the population are people of color, not, you know, Asian Americans, Latinos, um, different groups. And so, what it has helped us to do is to know that and to know where the concentration are people that we need to educate and talk to about donation. They also make up a lot of the transplant lists too, as well. And so, how do we get the message out that hey, people that look like you are waiting too as well?
Mhm.
And so it helps us there. I think we have to be careful that we keep that human component. So where they're making these AI visits to a doctor or whatever, yeah, that's not going to work with us. That
Yeah.
human contact, that empathy that AI cannot bring to the table, in words maybe, but not in how we interact with donor families, and people in general. So I think it has its place to help us build our awareness, our goals, and different things. But the human interaction is so very important and will remain an integral part, I feel, in the work that I do in my organization. Because I don't want to talk to an operator or an automatic person when I have questions. And
Yeah.
so I think we're just going to manage it as best we can. But I'm hearing that total jobs are going to be done away with because of AI. Depending on the space, I just don't know. Like, I don't like talking to, a voice recording that gives you prompts all the time. Sometimes you want that human so they can hear the desperation in your voice or whatever the concern is. And it's frustrating because you can't do that with certain parts
Yeah.
of AI. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely at different times. AI is here, as we all know, and
Yeah.
it's figuring out how do we do kind of adapt to it, right? That's what we got to do.
Yeah.
It's like when the internet came around. It's like when social media came around.
Yeah.
We were all. I was one of those when social media, Facebook days. I'm like, I'm not getting into it, but everyone has a Facebook. Everyone has
Yeah.
Instagram. Everyone's
Yes.
using the internet, and
Yeah.
these are pivotal
Yeah.
moments in our lives that we were able to experience. And I think we're just experiencing another moment in our
Yeah.
lives that we don't know what it looks like and how we're going to
Yeah.
utilize it
Yeah.
in the future. But it's here.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
really
no,
want to
and
talk.
we're gonna train. We have a group of people that's gonna be trained in it, and then how to see how we can incorporate it into some of our practices. I think when it comes to healthcare, when you mentioned it, I just said, we do that human element where it's needed needs to
Yeah.
say, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think if AI is going to be implemented at this space of healthcare nonprofits, it's always going to be at the admin level, at the things that people
yeah,
don't love doing. Because the
yeah,
reality, no one went to school to sit here and write
yeah,
notes all day and become an admin. But if you could,
exactly.
you talked about just human experiences, having that human interaction to me is always key.
Yeah,
Even this, we're having a great podcast, but I can imagine if we were in person, the energy becomes even differently because
yeah,
there's something about when humans get together and the energy
yeah,
in a room shifts.
yeah,
And 100%, I do agree with you. It's never going to take away that human interaction. Empathy looks very different from me versus someone that is just giving you words. All right,
yeah,
but when you can see facial expressions and that I really
yeah,
do care and it hit me,
yeah.
you're telling these stories. 100% do agree. What is this most proudest moment you're just proud of right now of the tenure at Donor Work that you've been able to accomplish in such a short period of time?
So I think the impact uh, of my first year here, where we were able to really come together and nearly do 100 more donors in 1 year, which had never been done before, and sustain that growth.
Hmm.
I always knew the potential was there, but how we went about to achieve that was the question. And I think that's my most proudest moment because we took more people off the list than ever before that were waiting on a transplant. Um, I think that's, again, maybe my proudest moment may have been when I got the phone call that I was the next CEO. Um, but I'm more into what that could do
Hmm.
for the organization. And so I was most proud of the opportunity to serve and then to be able to do what we did in my very first year here. I feel like that's the most important thing, where more people than ever before were able to get their second chance, were able to be at their daughter's wedding, were able to go back to school instead of being homeschooled because they were so sick. I think when I see all the legacies that these donors have created for people who thought they were going to die today, tomorrow, or very soon, that's what makes me most proud.
I love that. I have so many questions, and I feel like we don't even have enough time. Like this is good, but I'll leave you with this before we get into the blind
We'll
question.
do a
What
part two.
we have to, we have to. What do you want young leaders, especially women of color? I mean, your representation, not just for an individual of color, but a woman of color, and not too many times do we see that at the table. So, what is that when you're talking to them to know about staying the course? What do you want them to know?
Um, First and foremost, stay focused. Um, really be thoughtful, be authentic, have empathy, um, don't cut corners,
Hmm.
and don't compromise. I think, I was asked the question of whether or not, you know, I wanted to be something else other than the CEO, and the answer was no. And
Hmm.
to be honest with you, when I first, when the recruiter first called me, I asked some very basic questions about if there were candidates that were, from within the organization. Was this something where they just wanted to say that they had done a search? Or
Hmm.
were they truly looking for a game changer?
Yeah.
And I said, if you're looking for a game changer, I'm the one. If you're looking for the status quo, then you probably need to stick to your guns. So at first, I thought I wasn't going to get a call back, and I was fine because, to be honest with you, I was doing well in my current position. The goal was this, to be a CEO, but, what's more in one more year if this was not the opportunity for me?
Yeah.
So when they called me back and she said, hey, I talked to the board and they really want you to come in for an interview. They are looking for a game changer. I was happy to progress. But they could have hung up the phone and never called me back.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the risk that I took. Those are the things that my mentors and coaches told me. And I was able to make sure that I wasn't, just somebody that they brought in to say they brought in. And so don't compromise. If it's what you want, don't compromise. Don't compromise on your salary. Women, as we know, are generally still in this nation today paid less than men for the same job. So don't compromise on that. Know your worth, know your value, and put it on the table. And if it is the position for you, you will get it. They won't blink.
I love that you and the confidence already before you even got hired was looking for a game changer. I'm that person.
Yeah.
You look for somebody for status quo, then you go look somewhere else. That confidence is already building. Like you were ready for that moment. You were so ready for that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
As we start to wrap up, where can people find you? Are you on LinkedIn and more about the organization as well?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Janice Whaley, on LinkedIn. And to find out about Donor Network West, www.donornetworkwest.org is our website. And we currently service Northern Nevada and Northern California. So shout out to my peeps in Northern Nevada that we
On the
work
West Coast,
with.
on the West
It's a
Coast.
great community, yes.
I'll leave you this blind question here, Dr. Janice. What's one decision you made out of fear that you had to unlearn to lead the way you do now?
Oh, this is the one question I'm gonna have to ask you to repeat.
How good. Was that one decision that you made out of fear? You were scared, or you just had to make a decision and you just felt it was right that you had to really unlearn though, so that you can lead the way that you're leading today.
What is a decision? Well, I think the move here, even after I got the job, I was like petrified.
Got it.
Um, but I think there's another moment that was even more powerful, and that was during COVID. I was a brand new CEO. I'm like, what the heck is this? How are we going to still help people? How am I going to instill resilience and focus in my team when their family members are being affected, when sometimes they are infected by this horrible disease? And how am I going to get them to still go to work? Because again, our donors are in the hospital, and you had a hospital full of people who were suffering from this disease, and I was asking my team members to still go in there. So the fear was that everybody was just going to ghost the organization.
That's a good one. Yeah.
But they didn't. The resilience, we did the same amount of donors that year than we did the year prior. And so they were resilient, but with that comes thought too as well. I was very strategic at how to protect my team. And so I had to spend money to isolate people that still had to come to work, to make sure they had the right mask and attire and give guidance. I had an infectious disease expert talk to my team members every couple of weeks to let them know the latest and greatest on how to protect not just them, but also their families. And so the fear was, but then the results, what I learned from that fear is to breathe and to focus and to then create a strategy that will still have us able to do the work that we do. Because we're still waiting on an organ transplant.
Yeah.
And you can imagine they were fearful that they would die because of this pandemic. But yet we were still able to provide hope to many, many recipients during that time.
Well, Dr. Janice, I definitely appreciate your time. What is your blind question for the next leader? You have a blind question?
A blind question?
Question, yeah, a question that's going to go to the next leader here on the Heart and Hustle. Do you have a question that you want to ask them? Someone you don't know the leader, you just
Yeah.
want to ask a question, and you would probably never even hear the answer, maybe to.
What is your purpose?
What is your purpose?
I go by that because some people think they know their purpose, but they don't. So
I love it.
what is your purpose?
Copy. Guys, this has been Dr. Janice with so much insight. Thank you so much for your time. These are the conversations that we love to have because it does it sparks changes. When people get to hear stories like this and see individuals like Dr. Janice that really had fought for where she's at today, it changes the trajectory of how we see each other, how we live our own lives when we get to see people like Dr. Janice at that table and making such big impacts that probably no one ever even knew she was making. The first,
Yeah.
but not the last, because you're truly just paving the way for somebody else. We
Yes.
thank you guys. Make sure you guys do like and subscribe. Dr. Janice, we'll see you guys on the next one.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you.